Welcome to Leader You by Black River Performance Management, where we believe work should fuel the human spirit, not drain it. In this leadership podcast, we will dive into the lived experiences of people flourishing in today's workplace and beyond. Join us to hear real-life examples of experiences from our own lives and from the leaders we know and trust. Thank you for listening to the Leader You podcast. Today I have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Shane Hunt. Dr. Shane Hunt is the Dean of the College of Business and Michael C. Rutgers Professional of Marketing at Idaho State University. Shane is the recipient of the 2010 National Inspire Integrity Award from the National Society of Collegiate Scholars, the 2010 Lieutenant Colonel Barney Smith Awards as Professor of the Year, and the 2015 Honors Professor of the Year at Arkansas State University, and the 2019 National Teaching Innovation Award from the Association of Collegiate Marketing Educators. Shane's research has appeared in the Journal of Organizations, including the American Marketing Association and the National Conference in Sales and Management. Shane is also the co-author of 4 Principles of Marketing textbooks and the brand new professional selling textbook published by McGraw-Hill that are being used by students across the country and throughout the world. After completing his MBA at the University of Oklahoma, Shane went to work for a Fortune 500 company in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and spent 8 years working as a pricing analyst, product manager, and business development manager, overseeing numerous mergers and acquisitions initiatives before completing his PhD at Oklahoma State University. Shane lives here in Pocatello, Idaho, with his wife Jennifer and their 2 children, Andrew and Sarah. He also has an incredible mom that I really have come to adore and love.
No, and mom thinks the world of you too, Angie. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's been great. You know, we talk about, I tell the mayor all the time, we spiked the Pocatello population by 5 when we moved here. So
Nice.
I'm an only child, and so when we moved here and told mom how much we loved it, mom relocated here as well. So we're very, very thankful to be in this community.
Yeah, so you have a little bit more news to share about mom too.
Yeah, so as we're recording this, a fun little thing is I was just telling Angie off the air, I was saying that my mom and daughter have been selected to be on Wheel of Fortune on Grandparents' Week. And
cool.
That is a wild story. And so they are leaving the day that we're recording this. They're leaving to go to Los Angeles to be on the show. And then that they're going to tape it later this week. And then that show will air in May. So we may have to have a watch party at Idaho State University to celebrate Grandparents' Week on Wheel of Fortune.
Let me know if you do that. I definitely want to show up and support your mom and your daughter. That's so cool. What legends.
Legends. I told mom, I said the picture of her and Sarah, our daughter Sarah, the picture of them and Vanna and Pat Sajak will be a picture that will be in our home forever. So as long as we're alive, that picture will be on display. We're excited.
That's awesome. So we're here to talk about the leadership competency, appreciating others.
Yes.
I think that's something that you do very well. I've watched it in the community, and I've gotten to work with you. Well, one of the reasons I've had you on the podcast is I've got to know you. I did go to school at Idaho State University.
Go Bengals! Go Bengals!
I've gotten to know you over the past couple years. You've been here 2 years now?
I've been here almost 3.
Oh, okay.
Almost 3. Be 3 in June.
Yeah, and so when you first moved here, got to know you a little bit, but then kind of got to know you more through pancake breakfast feeds with United Way, and then now you're the new incoming president. And so I've really gotten to know you, and I just really love the work you're doing in Pocatello and with the School of Business and everything else. And I think you're a leader in the community and also nationally. So I wanted to ask you, what are some of the things that have led you to be someone that appreciates others?
Yeah, well, Angie, I love that, and thank you for having me on the podcast. And I love to talk about this. I say this to our students all the time. One of the phrases that makes me cringe the most is when I hear somebody say that they're a self-made man or a self-made woman, because I think the truth is every single one of us has had people in our life that have invested in us and helped us, mentored us, or directed us in a way that's changed our life. And so I think that notion, when I hear that term, it worries me. And I think too, the honest truth is I'm a first generation college student.
Me too.
And you and I know the power of education. And my mom and dad sacrificed a lot so that I could go to college. And because of that, my son and daughter have opportunities that my mom and dad couldn't have imagined. And that's only because they sacrificed and I got a degree in business, and it changed the trajectory of our lives. And all through that process, there have been people who have helped me and made my life richer in every possible way. And there's countless things from teachers and professors. I told this story the other day. A friend of ours is dealing with lung cancer, and it made me think about this. When Jennifer and I, my wife and I, we met at the University of Oklahoma in MBA school, and when we were finishing MBA school, I will just say, Angie, that I tell my students this too. Sometimes when you're a professor and you're a PhD, students assume that you made all A's.
Oh,
And I
you're
always like to say,
perfect.
I always like to say my GPA was in the meaty part of the curve, right? Meaty part of the curve. And my GPA was not great. And we would do back then in the late 90s these resume drops. So we had a guy at the University of Oklahoma named Mel Penn, and they would get these resume drops and he would send them to whatever company, right? They were looking specifically for MBA students, and we would do that. And, back in the day, we'd put the resumes on the really nice paper because we thought that was the secret weapon. And
Heavier.
heavy paper, Angie, means greatness. That is a direct correlation. Heavier the paper, the better the person. So I had my heavy paper and I did my, resume and sent it in. Well, I didn't have a lot of experience. I went straight through undergrad and MBA. I'd done an internship when I was in MBA school. And she sent it to a Fortune 500 company in Tulsa called the Williams Companies, which at the time was one of the 200 largest companies in the world and one of the largest in the state of Oklahoma. And what I didn't know behind the scenes is that the HR person, Lee, who had gotten all the resumes, I think 40 of us in the MBA program had submitted resumes. Lee had called Mel because they had worked together at Kerr-McGee before. And she called Mel and she said, Mel, I don't have time to look at all 40 of these. We got to have some names to interview. We need somebody in our marketing division. And she said, tell me two people that you vouch for and I'll interview them. And Mel, unbeknownst to me, vouched for me. And I got that interview and ultimately got that job. And that was my first job coming out of school. And, had a salary that I couldn't believe that somebody made as a young person. And it changed my life. And Mel passed away several years ago from lung cancer. And I thought about him a lot lately. But that's something that he did in a moment that changed the course and changed the opportunities of our life, of our kids' lives, of our future grandkids' lives. And I think everyone has those stories. And one of the best things about being a dean of a business school or being a professor is that we get to do that every day. There are ways that we get to help connect students to opportunities. But again, all of this works better, and I would argue it only works if people take the time to appreciate others. My kids will tell you, so we have a son who's a junior in college, a marketing major at ISU, Andrew, and a daughter, Sarah, who just recently started driving. So she's driving, and she's a sophomore at Highland, and they are both smarter, better looking, more resourceful versions of their dad. I said, we're the same. If I were a lot smarter and better looking, we'd all be the same. But they, it's one thing that I have been passionate since they were old enough to remember about saying thank you. And I think that I've had more opportunities in my life because of relationships developed because you take the time and you're intentional to let people know how much you appreciate them. And one time I remember my son was little and we were at something and he'd gotten something from someone and I said, hey, did you tell him thank you? And he said, I did, but like as a dad and sometimes can be kind of a pest like dad, I said, well, tell him again. And he goes, Dad, he goes, I don't want to tell him again. He said, I already told him once. He said, if I tell him twice, he's going to think I'm weird. And I said, Andrew, here's what I can tell you as a proud middle-aged man. I said, I've never known someone who got upset because you said thank you twice. And I want them to understand the opportunities that they have and to take that with others. I think the final piece of that, Angie, is where we find ourselves today. So I'm a marketing professor, and we talk a lot in business about worker shortages. So when I go around the state and I talk to executives and people hiring our students, the worker shortage is one of the biggest concerns, from manufacturing to telecommunications to healthcare administration to whatever business you're in, sports, whatever. And the truth is, with the demographics, as they are, that's probably going to be a challenge for the rest of you and I's life, right? And so if you talk about then you say we've got to be able to recruit the best people, but then we've got to be able to retain the best people because the truth is right now in 2023, if I've got an amazing person at Idaho State University that works for me, odds are if they're amazing, they could leave tomorrow for more money. And so if we are not a place where people feel appreciated, where people see how what they're doing is leading to the overall success of students or the community or whatever, I think we're going to have a very hard time keeping our best people at a university or at any other organization.
I couldn't agree any more than I do. That's what we see in organizations is that people leave when they don't feel appreciated. It's not the money.
No.
And even the science behind motivation talks about, it's not, you can pay people more, but if they don't feel appreciated and they don't have those basic psychological needs met, that competency, autonomy, and relatedness and the connection, those are the things that they're missing.
100%.
And so I couldn't agree more when it comes to what we need to be focusing on moving forward. That's why I want to spend some time gleaning wisdom from people who know and are already doing it and doing it well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I completely agree. And I think, too, you made a great point, which is I love coming to work every day. I love being a part of the Idaho State University family because I feel appreciated. And I'm at a place where we appreciate others and where we all feel like we are working together to have this overall goal, which benefits our students. It changes generations of lives and it benefits society. And I think it's important, Angie, where a lot of people go wrong is they're appreciative, but they're not intentional about showing that or highlighting that. And I've talked to companies who are like, this person was amazing. We love them. And I can't believe they left. And I would ask the question of, well, did they feel loved?
Did they know it?
Did they know that? Because the truth is, if you're only going to compete on money, that can be a very slippery slope. And you see that everything from fast food restaurants to high-end companies, it's a real challenge because if you are only competing on money, what they found is we can raise it $1 an hour, $2 an hour, $3 an hour and keep raising it. But if people don't feel appreciated, you really can't get that to a high enough number. And so you're chasing something that I think is a little off, saying, well, if we paid somebody $16 an hour instead of $15, that's the secret. It's not. And it's about how you treat people and how you make them feel appreciated.
Yeah, and everybody's different in what makes them feel appreciated. And I think sometimes it's just being curious and asking those people, how do you feel? What makes you feel appreciated? Like if you were working for me, we'd be having a meeting here and I'd be saying, Shane, what makes you feel appreciated? What don't you like? Because some people don't want external, they don't want kudos or they don't want to be appreciated in front of people. Everybody has different needs and connecting with your employees and finding out what's important to them.
I think it's essential that you have conversations with your employees, right? And with your team. And I don't know really how organizations work if you're not doing that. Because they are different things. I'm amazed at how many companies don't take the opportunity to publicly or privately recognize employees. And that always amazed me because the recognition part, saying thank you. So right now we're dealing with an economy, stock market's up and down. It has challenges. We may or may not be entering a recession. So we may or may not have the money or resources as a university or as an organization to say, okay, Angie, you're doing great. We want to give you this much more money. We might not have the ability to do that. But every single day you have the ability to let somebody know how much you care about them and that they're appreciated. I think about my son, one other story. So my son, when he was 4, the very first thing, so my son's 21 now. He's a great high school basketball player. He's taller than me. But when he was 4, my first experience as a dad in sports was when he played 4-year-old T-ball. And 4-year-old T-ball, for those of you that are listening or watching, 4-year-old T-ball is really no resemblance to baseball at all. Essentially, everyone bats, the ball gets hit, all 10 of the little kids storm in and dive for the ball. Nobody gets thrown out. And one kid comes out with the ball, and like the one time a game it's your son or daughter, you're like, what an amazing thing. That was the highlight of the game. And you're taking pictures and you're doing stuff. So we go through that whole process. He's 4 years old. I can still see him. He had little glasses, and we get to the last game. This was when we lived in Tulsa, and they had a coach, and the coach's name I still remember was Jay. And Jay at the end gave all the little kids, little 4-year-olds, medals. They all got these kind of like fake gold medals for finishing the season. Right? Nobody won those games. And I can still remember 17 years later when my son got his medal, I saw a look on his face that I'd never seen before. And it was a look not like joy of, hey, we're going to go get popsicles, or hey, we're going to go to Disney World, or hey, we're going to go do something you want to do. Not like that. It was this expression, and I can see his smile. But he was so proud of what he accomplished, that they went to all the practices and that they finished the season, and he was proud of what he's done. And I can still see that smile. There was no money. There was nothing. And I think to myself, and I say this to our students, you know what 4-year-olds grow up to be? 34-year-olds, 54-year-olds. And that part of us never changes. I like to feel appreciated. I like things that say, this is something that Shane helped make possible, and to go back and do that. And I would tell anyone that's listening, so the best part, so being a professor is the best job in the world. Best job in the world. And when you talk about the reasons it's the best job in the world, most people don't get the first one, the one that's most joyful in being a professor. I've been a professor 16 years. And I have taught personally, I teach an intro to marketing class as dean. I have personally taught over 3,000 students over the years, 2 different universities. And the number of times that I have a student on LinkedIn or in an email or in a text message or on a phone call that says, Doctor, I just want to tell you, thank you for being a reference. Thank you for writing that letter. I got this job. I got this promotion. I have this opportunity. And I tell people who are about to be professors, we've hired several great new professors that are starting this year for us at Idaho State, amazing young scholars. But I said, nobody told me that when I was starting, to say, the joy that you find from that and seeing your former students who you got to be a small part in their development, seeing them succeed and have great lives, it makes it the best job in the world. And I can't imagine ever doing something where you didn't get to have that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I share that experience of being a previous professor and then being married to an Idaho
Yeah,
State professor.
absolutely.
The success of your students is your success,
100%.
and there is so much meaning and purpose in that, and it does bring so much joy to your life.
Yeah.
And I think appreciating and learning, I've learned so much from my students, and I know you
Oh,
have too.
absolutely.
You think the professor's the one with all the wisdom, but half the time, your students are the greatest
No,
teachers.
they are, and that's the best part of this, right? That's you see the new Indiana Jones movies coming out, and I saw a preview. My wife and I went to the movies the other night. We saw the preview for it, and I was laughing because Indiana Jones is like, in his 80s, and he's still a professor. He's teaching, whatever archaeology or whatever they teach in Indiana Jones. And I made reference to my wife while we were watching the preview. I said, that's going to be me, not the part with the whip or riding motorcycles, but truly, I can't imagine ever not being a professor, because you still have the opportunity to help students and change the trajectory, again, not just of their lives, but of generations of lives. And I always say this: we have a challenge today where a lot of people, will struggle with talking about the value of higher education, and you hear different things, and there's always stuff that gets politicized around that. What I would always say is this: college changed everything about my life,
And mine.
every single thing. And so when I look out at our students, what I see well, I'll say this, Angie, what I see when I see our students, what I saw as a young professor was myself, was a young guy that didn't have a lot of confidence. I didn't know if I was smart enough to do it. I didn't know how it was going to all work out, if I was going to be able to graduate. And the truth is, today, what I see when I see our students is I see my son and daughter. And I think about, how would we want professors to treat my son or daughter, or staff members to treat my son or daughter? And I think if we all have that kind of mindset of how would we want our children treated, I think it leads to the kinds of outcomes that we want.
Mm-hmm.
And thinking about that in every situation that's there. So I just think it's a really powerful thing.
I agree 100%. And I have such an appreciation for higher education and how it has changed my life. And it doesn't have to be a 4-year degree, it could be literally a CTE program. It
Absolutely.
could be any type of formal education that puts you through a program that helps you to get a skill and learn the skills and then have a network of people. It's a life changer.
It is.
And when people go through that process, there are so many people that see their gifts and their talents and support them and bring out, we like to say discovering gems in
Yes.
Idaho, right?
Yes.
So many kids need more nurturing and they need more support because they don't have that in their home
Yeah.
lives. And so college is the perfect opportunity for them to actually be shined up
Absolutely.
and have a space for them to make mistakes on a smaller
Absolutely.
scale. It's a safety net. There's a safety net.
There is.
There's counseling. There's support. There's people there to help them through the difficult things, and they go through it through a process which helps them to get to the place where they can do this on their own. And I appreciate the process that is.
Oh, and I think again, it goes back. And one of the things I always say, and it's probably something I think about more now than I ever have in my life or my career, is being very intentional about what that is. It is not enough today. And I would say this: you think about students that are with us right now. A lot of those students graduated high school in the pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
started college in the pandemic, have dealt with all of the emotional and financial challenges that go along with that.
Mm-hmm.
It is not enough for us to just say, hey, we've got some resources, go find them. Like I want us, I want our team to walk them over, to connect them, to call that person, to say, hey, we've got someone, can they come over and see you? How can we help? And having that support system.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, that is what that you see. And I always love graduation. So I love graduation. And this semester we're gonna have graduation at Regem because of the Holt Arena renovations.
Mm-hmm.
But I love every semester when we have it whole because what I know on this side is I can look at so many of those graduates and see all of the bumps in the road
Mm-hmm.
that I knew about that people in the audience don't know about, but knowing that it was someone on our team that helped them through that.
Yep.
And so when they go across that stage and they wave to their parents, they wave to their spouse, they wave to their children, they wave to their loved ones and friends, I know that there were people at ISU, people on our team that made that possible.
Mm-hmm.
And seeing that and then seeing them show that appreciation or seeing their post on LinkedIn or on social media about this person helped me with this. I'll give you an example of this. So we had a student, I apologize, have a little bit of a cold there for all you watching, seeing me wipe my nose. What I still think about this story. So I had only been at Idaho State a few months, and it was during the pandemic. And so I got here in June of 2020. So that first semester, it was the full pandemic. We didn't have vaccines, and literally, we were just trying to survive.
Mm-hmm.
So as dean, I teach a big intro to marketing class, and I love to teach. And uh, both times I've been dean, they said, "Well, Shane, you're dean, you don't have to teach." I said, "Well, if I don't get to teach, I don't want to do the job." So I teach a big class. I was in this big lecture room, but because of COVID restrictions, with this huge, like 200 seat lecture room, I only have 35 students in there. It's like one of the biggest classes that we had during the pandemic. So I had my face shield, I had my mask. Every day that I would go to class, there was a mirror where I would go to my classroom and I would look over and I think to myself, I look like a guy about to rob a Walgreens, right? This is not, I don't know if my students, this is not what I expected. But we went in there and we do that and we have that experience. So we're here, we've been here a few months. One of the things that COVID had done was it was extremely difficult to like get into the DMV, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there was, you had to have this many spaces and you're waiting outside in the cold. So I've been here a few months and I had not yet got my new, as I now have on my car, my proud Idaho State Bengal license plate for my car. So it still had Arkansas plates. So I'm leaving one day in the fall and I'm going out to my car and I see a university police officer pull around and come back around the other way. And I thought, maybe my tag's expired. Maybe I haven't been paying attention. Maybe he's like, sir, why do you not get new plates? So he swings back around and I'm getting in my car and he pulls up and I'm thinking to myself, Angie, I'm like, I did something wrong. I'm going to tell him, hey, I'll go tomorrow. I'll wait in the line.
Mhm.
He said, are you Dr. Shane Hunt? I said, I am. And he said, oh, I just want to tell you. And he told me his story. And his story was um, he had gone to school and dropped out. He said, my family was paying for it and uh, I wasn't really serious about it. I dropped out and he'd since gotten married and had a little girl. And he said, I wanted to do something different and better for them. And he told the story about how one of our advisors worked with him because he wasn't really sure where to start. He wanted to get a business degree and how that looked. And he talked about one of our advisors, Tara, and about how she walked him through every step of that process. And he took the time to double back around and make me think that I was getting arrested or getting a ticket or something. But he just wanted me to know that Tara had made his life and his spouse's life and his daughter's life better.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is such a powerful thing. And so I think about that. So knowing people, and I was thrilled. I went home and sent a long email to Tara to share that story with her because I wanted her to know there's so many things we do in the course of the day. What Mel Penn did in that story I told earlier, what Mel did in a moment, in a second on the phone that was just part of his day was something that changed my life and my kids' lives forever. And that's one of the best parts about what we do.
Oh, it's absolutely amazing. And I think it takes a little bit of reflecting to
Yeah.
realize how those doors opened up for you. And I've been doing a lot of reflecting this past year of the people that were instrumental in my success and making sure that they know it.
Absolutely.
Because like you said, if you don't have the intent, there's no, without action, it's really not really appreciation. Nobody knows you appreciate them if you appreciate them in your mind.
Well, they don't. And too many people don't take the time. And quite frankly, sometimes it gets to be too late.
Yeah.
I think about that a lot more. My dad passed away 8 years ago. And, he was perfectly healthy at the beginning of January and got sick and passed away in April.
Mm-hmm.
And so seeing how fast that happened, it's a reminder to all of us that you have to take that opportunity. And I tell the story about my mom and dad. But when I first got to Idaho State University, and we've been so thrilled in the College of Business, we've had record fundraising success. We've quintupled the number of endowed professorships. We've doubled the number of scholarships that our students receive. But the very first one that I wanted to do was when I got here, I permanently endowed a scholarship that will go on forever at the Idaho State University College of Business, where a business student every year will get a scholarship in my mom and dad's name.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something, and I told my mom this, and that is me saying, uh, thank you. That is that because of the sacrifices they made, that 100 years from now, there'll be generations of college students that still benefit and still have the opportunity to get a college degree in my mom and dad's name.
Mm-hmm.
And that was absolutely the intention of that, and something we're proud. I get to give that away every year, and I get so excited about it. It's awesome.
That's a cool example of appreciating others and leaving a legacy of just changing the trajectory of people's lives, and that's the best gift you can really give.
Well, and I want to give a shout out to our business community, our partners, our donors, so many companies in Southeast Idaho, so many companies in the state and throughout the country, so many individuals, so many alums give money to support students. And when we think about saying thank you, I like to tell this story. It's probably my favorite of the donor stories. All of our students send thank you notes. So, my mom gets a thank you note for the scholarship in my mom and dad's name, and the donors always love that. It's a really fun thing. But I don't think sometimes thank you is even enough to say how those dollars that you're giving changes the trajectory. So I was a dean. I was a young dean. It's when I was dean of Arkansas State, and had a non-traditional student, female student, who came up to me. She was taking my marketing class. So I was dean, and she came up, and Angie, you know this from being a professor. You always know when you're talking to students and somebody's like, "Hey, I'll wait, let them go first," that whoever wants to wait till there's nobody there, it's probably something serious.
More private, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And So the next last person goes out and we answer the question about, the quiz or homework or whatever it might be. And this young woman immediately, as soon as the door closed, and I said, what's up? What can we help with? Her eyes welled up with tears. And she proceeded to tell me a story about um, she had gone through a divorce and had issues with her credit. But basically, she'd maxed out the amount of financial aid she could get. She was an accounting major, had one semester left, had a really good GPA, but had no way, single mom, had no way for her to finish her last semester.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what it is. So as things work out, parallel to that day, that afternoon, my class was in the morning, and that afternoon, um, our development director, David, and I were visiting with a donor who wanted to give a scholarship. They permanently endowed a scholarship, and in fact, they committed to giving us $100,000. And the way we structured that, because they said we want, so if you think about an endowment, if any of you are familiar with those, what happens is typically if you have $100,000, it gets put in an endowment, and then you're able to use 4 or 5% of that every year, so $4 or 5,000. And there's usually a delay when you could do that. And one of the things that they had said was, we want the dollars to have an immediate impact. So David and I worked with them, and we structured it in a way to where each year they would give us 20,000 a year for 5 years. And each year we would take 10,000 and put it towards the endowment that would go on forever. It'll be going on 100 years from now. And we would take 10,000 and give it out immediately as 4 $2,500 scholarships. And they liked that. So we ran that parallel. So we meet on that same afternoon, on a Tuesday afternoon. By Friday, we had finished that arrangement. Everybody had signed it. The following Tuesday in class, I asked the lady, I said, hey, can I visit with you for a second? I said, we've got this mid-year scholarship that we're going to give out. These 2,500 was about what it took to cover an entire semester,
Mm-hmm.
tuition and fees. And I said, you should apply for this scholarship. And so she said, okay, I will. So she applied that same Tuesday. And we had to have the scholarship committee meet special because this was kind of an out of the regular cycle, but the donor wanted the dollars to go work immediately. So within a week after that scholarship committee met, she got one of those scholarships. And so back in class, same thing, waiting for the last person, and immediately eyes well up with tears. And I'll be honest with you, my eyes got a little choked up too. And she said, I can't believe what a blessing this is, and I'm going to be able to finish school.
Mm-hmm.
So fast forward, and I tell the story when I thank donors, because I hope all of you that have given to our students at Idaho State University, I hope you know how much we appreciate you.
Mm-hmm.
And this young woman sends me an email. She takes a job at an accounting firm in Ohio, had family in Ohio. She goes to Ohio. A few months goes by. I get an email from her, and I still keep this email where she says, I just wanted to say thank you again. I wanted you to please tell the donor thank you for what they did. And she said, I'm making more money starting out from school than anyone in my family has ever made.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the business we should be in.
Mm-hmm.
And she and her daughter and future generations have more opportunities because a donor who never met her said, I'm going to invest money in the future generations of our students.
Mm-hmm.
So to everyone that listens to this that has given to support our students through scholarships or programs, those kinds of stories I get to hear on a regular basis, and those would not be possible without all of you. And so from the bottom of my heart, from all of us at ISU, thank you for everything you do.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate seeing the lives changed, and everyone who doesn't know where it's going to go. They don't see they don't get to see that, but to hear the stories, it's really that's the part about being intentional to bring it back and let people know, hey, your money went here. Even with United Way,
Absolutely.
you think about like we're donating this money. Where does that go? It's so nice to get the follow up because you feel much more appreciated when when that loop is closed.
Well, and that's something we do too. So obviously, I'm passionate about a lot of nonprofits in our community.
Mm-hmm.
I'm especially passionate about the United Way and being president of the board of directors. Um, Part of that role, and you know this being on the board, part of that role is that we get to go out, and the partner agencies that the United Way helps fund, we get to go on site visits, right? They're kind of like audits if you think about it like this. Like, hey, we gave you this money for this program, and what does that do? That's one of the coolest parts of the entire role of being on the board. And we're just about to go out and do those for this year. When I went last year, I went on site visits. Two of the programs I was not that familiar with, even being on the board of the United Way for a number of years. And we went and we saw these programs that were helping kids, that were helping teenagers, that were providing food for people who needed food.
Mm-hmm.
And it becomes something where we give a lot of, I think we do this in higher ed sometimes too. We want to quote statistics. We want to say, okay, we helped this many people, or if you go to college and graduate, you're going to make this much more. And those aggregate statistics are fine. But that doesn't resonate to me in the same way that when I'm sitting there talking to a 13-year-old who was like, I come here every day and, because we didn't have enough to eat at our house.
Yeah.
Like that's like I can see that 13-year-old in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think sometimes we talk about the aggregate and we get caught up in that. And we really have to focus on the appreciation of what can we do for this person.
Mm-hmm.
Angie, one of my favorite stories to tell. So when I was a young professor at Arkansas State, we took our students in the marketing club to St. Jude Children's Research Hospital in Memphis. And I would encourage anyone, if a lot of people I know in this community give, but if you ever have the chance, if you're ever near Memphis, go and do the tour. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So the first time that I go on the tour, we are with about 12 of our students. By the way, 3 of my former marketing students still work at St. Jude. St. Jude takes about $2 million a day, every day, 365 days a year they have to raise in order for the kids and their families to never be charged, which is what they do, and all the research that they do. And you go through this tour, and already, so when I went on it the first time, I think my son was 7 and my daughter was 2.
Mm-hmm.
And so every kid that I saw on the tour reminded me of Andrew and Sarah.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was already choked up, and it was an emotional thing. And at the time, the very last thing that you do on the tour is you go to a big room, looks like about the size of a big classroom. And you go in, and they have all of the different types of childhood cancer. Mm-hmm. And they show what the survival rate was when Danny Thomas started St. Jude and what it was at that time. Mm-hmm. And every one of them was these amazing statistics. Mm-hmm. And it was, the survival rate for this type of cancer 50 years before was 17%. And now the survival rate's 59%. Or the survival rate was 42%, and now it's 89%. Mm-hmm. And every one of them was amazing. And they have a doctor that comes in at the end on the tour, and I will always remember this. And I was already choked up. We all were. It was an emotional day. But I remember saying to the doctor, I said, this is incredible what you all have done and what St. Jude's has done and what they've made possible. And he said something that I will always think about, and I think about it in this context in higher education and so many different things with United Way. He said, Shane, he said to a mom and dad, he said, the only 2 percentages that matter are 0 and 100. So he said, we might have an 89% survival rate of this type of childhood cancer, but to a mom and dad, the only number that matters is 0 or 100. My daughter, my son is better. My daughter or my son has a future because of the work that they're doing. Mm. And that's always stuck with me. And my wife and I have given to St. Jude since then. But I think about that in higher education and what we do. Like at the end of the day, every student that comes to Idaho State University, yes, we can talk about graduation rates or this and retention rates or that, and all that stuff is very important. But when I see students, what I think about is 0 and 100. Mm-hmm. To their mom and dad, to their spouse, to their kids, it's 0 and 100. Did we help them have a better life or did we not? Mm-hmm. And I think having that intentionality to look at things as individual cases and saying we want to make that better, to me, helps us stay focused on what the most important parts of our job really are.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, thank you for sharing all the stories.
Yeah.
You are like the master storyteller. That's the marketing
It's all the
genius.
sweater vests. And I want the crowd to know that I get these in blue. So I've got them in blue, green. I was telling Angie before, normally I have my black and orange on, but I have now these in every color that they'll sell them in. So,
Yeah. I was like,
we've
that's
got
a
very
nice,
tasteful.
nice Bronco blue.
Yeah, no Broncos, no Broncos.
I'm a Bronco and a Bengal.
We love our great friends up at Boise State at the University of Idaho, but no, as you see here, very tasteful Idaho State on there. So
Yeah, I have a daughter graduate from ISU. I'm an Idaho
yep.
State graduate. I also graduate from BSU and I have a son working at BSU, and he just got promoted, and I'm appreciative of all the people that have supported him, and he's graduating with
Yep.
his master's. So two college graduates. I was the first
Yep.
generation. Now have two college graduates through the help of other people who
Absolutely.
care and enough to help them and change our life and our family trajectory.
Well, and I always say, and I think that's such a powerful story, Angie. And I always tell students whenever I get to let them know that they won a scholarship, I always love to tell them, I said, we want you to have this scholarship. We want you to finish strong at Idaho State. We want you to get a degree and a great job. And I said, the only thing that I ask of you is that when you're an executive and you have your own business and you've been able to flourish from this opportunity, the only thing that I ask is that you reach back and help that next generation of students.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's so often when I talk to our alums here at Idaho State, that's what they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I always love it. I still remember the first scholarship that I got that helped me go through school was from the Frakes family. And I wouldn't know the Frakes family if they were sitting around this table. I have no idea. I don't have any idea if I'm pronouncing their name the right way. But I know that early in my career, their name stayed on my resume for years. And what was so powerful about that was, yes, it was money to help with college. But the part that always stood with me was that someone who I've never met thought highly enough about me or cared enough about me to invest in me. And that's something that I think about and changed my life and something I think about with our students all the time.
Oh yeah, paying it forward.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's absolutely a way of appreciating others. Are there any hard lessons that you learned or gifts that you could share with our listeners on things you wish would have known earlier, or wow, I learned this one the hard way?
Yeah. Well, I think that's such a great question. And I will tell you, I feel so blessed every single day that whatever, my birthday's in 2 days.
Ooh, happy
Yeah.
birthday.
So, um, I'll be 47.
Mhm.
And I would tell you that all of those hard lessons were things that helped lead me to where I am
Mhm.
and a place where I'm so happy and I'm so thankful. Um, I think the lessons that I would say on that is one about being intentional about thinking that. I think with leadership, I think another thing that I think about a lot more than I did 10 or 15 years ago. I was not good at this the first time I was a business school dean at another school. I wasn't good at thinking about what happens when I'm not there. And I think as leaders, one of the things that I would encourage everyone is who's going to take over when you're doing something else or when you just don't want to do what you're doing anymore. And I've tried and I think have been more effective here and because I think about it more about what would happen if I'm not in this role? What would happen? How do we have that bench depth? How do we have leaders in an organization at the university? If that person leaves or just doesn't want to do it anymore, how do we make sure that the next generation of leaders is being prepared? And I think being intentional about that, I think a lot of companies struggle and not with succession planning like in a small business, but just in like having that infrastructure to deal with loss,
Mhm.
right? So the same way we talk about the worker shortages, the truth is again, our great people can leave for more money, and maybe sometimes there's nothing we can do because it's an opportunity that they want, or it's in a place that they want to live, or they have family issues, whatever it is. We need to be very prepared and intentional on who that next generation of leaders is going to be. And so we do a lot more stuff on there. And I would encourage leaders to think about that. I think a lot of times our egos get the better of us and we think, well, we don't want to prepare for that because I'm in charge and I'm going to be in charge. But the truth is, none of us know.
Mhm.
And I think we're doing a disservice to the organizations that we lead if we are not doing those things. And I would just say this too with students that I encourage them to do. Wherever they're going to live, and we have students from Idaho State University in the College of Business. Our graduates last year went to work in 25 different states. They went to work in 7 different countries. And the thing that I ask them as well is when you go to whatever community that is, if that's Pocatello or Idaho Falls or Boise, if that's Salt Lake City or Dallas, um, if that's Canada or Mexico, or wherever you're going to go, the thing that I always encourage them is be a part and a positive part of the community that you live in.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that that is something that you see and something I talk to my son and daughter a lot about. I talk to our students a lot about because you want to be in a place that you care about. And we feel so fortunate to be in Pocatello. But we also, with that, comes a responsibility to say we've got to do our part to make that community better, to provide new opportunities, right?
Mhm.
Through nonprofits or other types of servant leadership opportunities that are out there. And I would say be very intentional about that. And so I think all of those things are there. But again, I've had a lot of people, Angie, who have invested in me, and every single day, even on the days that there's maybe a bump in the road, for any of them that are listening to that, I am filled with gratitude because they were kind and helpful when they didn't have to be, and I get to live a life that I love, and I get to see my kids flourish because of that investment. And so, for as long as I'm around, I'm going to tell people thank you and try to show that appreciation. Um,
Two times.
yeah,
Two times.
as many times as you
Right.
can.
Yeah.
And I think about that too. And I think
Mhm.
about when I was in school, I always remember like a guy came and talked one time and he said, he said it's you get more joy giving than receiving. And I remember thinking as a young guy, I was like, I
No
don't think
way.
that's true. Yeah, this guy's making.
They're lying.
I prefer getting stuff. But as somebody about to turn 47, like that's one of the truest things I've
It is.
ever heard. And it is something that we all have that responsibility on. And I would say the last thing is just what you said, which is take that moment. Take that moment and say, I grew up in Oklahoma City and went to the University of Oklahoma. Um, I was in school when the Murrah building bombing happened. I remember watching from my office when September 11th happened. I've seen too many things in my life and seen how sudden things can change. That one of the things that I try to do every day for the people in my life that I love is to let them know that I love them and I appreciate them. And I would encourage everybody to do that.
Absolutely. Put it in your calendars.
Yep.
Put a note, whatever you need to do to make it happen. And in fact, just listening to this today, please take it forward. And if you learn something in here, share it. We would appreciate you sharing this message because it's an incredible message, an incredible story. So many things to appreciate. I appreciate your authenticity, sharing your story and your story of your students and your mom and your son and your daughter and your wife and all the people that you impact the lives of because you show appreciation and they feel valued, loved, seen, heard, all the things that every single human really needs.
Absolutely. And for all the technological changes, for all the ways our world is different, that hasn't changed in 100 years.
No.
And 100 years from now, we might all be on hovercrafts or who knows how we're getting around. I'll guarantee you 100 years from now, my great grandchildren, in whatever they're doing, are going to want to feel appreciated. And if they're going to be successful, they're going to need to show that appreciation to others. That is something, one of the few things in our society that's truly timeless.
Yeah. You want to build a skill that's going to last?
Yep.
Work on that skill of
Absolutely.
appreciating and being kind and caring to other people. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Angie.
Thank you for our listeners. Like I said, we'd appreciate you share because this message is very powerful. And if this was value to you, if share it, watch it with your team, have a discussion about it, and let us know other topics that you'd like to hear. Thank you so much.